Hello everyone. So the topic of today's video is going to be managing map packs. So I have talked about map packs in the past, and basically what they are is basically they start with a random structure that gives a random percent chance that a certain map will be picked. And then after said random structure, there's just a big if statement that says if a certain map is selected, then it just selects that particular map. And inside that if statement is simply the code of that individual map script. So the first issue that I wanted to go over today is whether a script such as this is necessary anymore. Because for those who don't know, is that in the definitive edition, the game has built-in map pools. So if we're selecting a map, we can go from single to random, and we can select a couple maps that we would want to play. So we could apply those, and it would get a certain map out of those ones that we select. So it randomly selected Arabia, and we're going to be playing that. So that's useful to know. But let's go back to the standard game again. And so in the previous example, what did we do? So we selected 3 times 4, so that's 12 total maps. So that works well for 12 total maps, but say if we go from the standard maps to the custom maps, this custom map folder has over 200 individual map scripts. And so if I want to select very many maps, I'd have to navigate through this pretty awkward interface with all these images with question marks and small text to select all the different maps individually. And so if I keep going on, we can see that when we're dealing with custom maps, our specific pool is limited. So even if we wanted more maps than the ones that are selected, we can't do that. So when we're dealing with the game's built-in map pool generator, it can be very useful if you don't know a whole lot about random map scripting and you just need to select a couple of maps for a pool. But for those of us who would like to have larger map packs, then something like this would indeed be necessary. So when we're dealing with larger map packs such as this, we need to think of ways to construct them more efficiently, because from personal experience, after so many years of handling a map pack as big as this, manually copying and pasting the individual maps to and from those individual files into the overall script can be very tedious and can lead to a lot of errors if you're not careful. And so when it comes to making map packs very efficiently, the first thing I wanted to talk about was this website, which is aoe2map.net. So primarily, this is basically a database for various maps. So if we go into the maps folder, we can see many maps made by many different people, which are available for people to download. But also notice that this website also has a map pack creator. And so basically what this is for creating map packs automatically. So we can take some RMS files. So for example, I have some in this folder here, which I want to make a map pack out of. And so I can select those and I can drag them over here. And now when we're dealing with the map pack creator in aoe2map.net, it's useful, but it has some limitations also. So the first limitation is that it's limited to 100 maps. So we can independently vary the probability of a certain map, but if we have over 100 items, so for example, this particular folder has 195 items, if we keep going down to the list, some of these maps will end up having a probability of 0, which is not good in terms of randomly selecting it for gameplay. And also a limitation for this map pack creator is the fact that at the end of the way this particular generator works is that it groups all of the constants for the maps and puts them at the beginning of the script, which I'm sure there's a reason for that, but I can't really speak to it. So if we go ahead and create this, we can see that after the random structure, it groups all of the constants for the individual maps at the beginning of the script before it goes down and randomly selects each of the individual map scripts. And for some situations, so for example, if I go into this map here, if I have a certain constant defined twice, so I have ground 1 in this temperate case and ground 1 in this pine case, this particular map pack creator will throw up an error saying you have the same constant defined twice in the same map. And even though this works in this particular individual map, it's going to cause errors if we put it into an overall map script such as this. And the website will actually say that that same constant is declared more than once. So for situations in which you have a particular constant defined twice, this particular map pack creator will reduce that and consolidate it into only one per map. And I usually use a method like this when I'm trying to add some terrain variety. So I can use one constant and set it to different terrain values based on what random season, or so to speak. So at best, you could potentially be losing out on some variety, or at worst, the map may not work at all. So, in light of the limitations of existing methods, I decided to create my own tool, which is very tailored to my specific needs. So I'll be going through this, its capabilities and how to use it. And for those of you who may find this useful, I'll make it available for downloading also. So this map pack manager has two tabs. So the manager tab just has a list of all of the different maps that are going to be comprising the map pack. And the editor tab is where the code of that map is going to end up being. So the first thing we need to talk about is how to comprise this list. So if you don't have particularly many maps, you could potentially enter the data in manually, but a potentially more effective way to gather this data is by using a query. So if you're not super familiar with queries, that's okay. You don't need to know a whole lot in order to make use of them here. Basically, what a query is a way to gather data from a source and format it in a specific way. So I have a query here, and I'm going to get rid of it to show you how we would make this from scratch. So delete the query and delete that corresponding table. So when we're doing a query, we can go to the Data tab in Excel, New Query, and then from Folder. And this is going to be the folder where all the maps are stored. So I have it in this folder here. And I can go then to transform data. So we can see that the query has imported all the files that were in that particular folder. We can see all the different file names of the maps here. And it also generated for us some default columns. We're going to use some of these, but most of them we're going to remove. So I'm going to keep the file name and I'm going to keep the path. So all these other things I can get rid of, remove these columns. So what this tool is going to be looking for, it's going to be looking for the path of the file, the name of the file. It's also going to need a title, which the game is going to use in order to determine when to use this map and when not to. That's going to be based on this file name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this column. And then after duplicating, I can format it in a specific way. So I want to keep the name, but I really don't care about the version number or the extension. So I'm going to split this column by a delimiter, and that is going to be space V. I'm going to do the rightmost delimiter And we can see after applying that, it split the column. So we just have the name here, and we can delete this. So I want this name to be formatted in a certain way. So what I can do is I can go transform, format, uppercase. So now it made all those uppercase. And then I want to replace the spaces with underscores. So I can go to replace values, space with underscore. And in the same fashion, I'm going to replace all the hyphens with underscores also. And if there are any decimals in this, I'm going to just replace that with nothing to just get rid of them. So now we have a title that the game is able to read, and I'm going to do one more thing to it. So I'm going to enclose the name in brackets, and I'll explain why later. So I'm going to add a custom column. It's going to be based on the name that we copied over. It's going to have a start bracket, ampersand, and then the column, ampersand, end bracket, in quotes. So now we have our new name enclosed in brackets. And then the other thing we need is a custom column saying whether or not we want to enable this map. So we're going to call that enable, and it's just going to say yes for now. But of course, we can change it to no if we want to remove this particular map. And then it also needs an index column. So I can add an index column here starting from 1. So we have index, I'll put that over here. We have enable, I'll put that over here. This is going to be called title. And with the folder path, and we have file name. So these are the columns that we're going to be using. And then once that's done, I'm going to close and load to in a specific position, and I'm going to load it over here. So we can see that it formatted all of the data in the table based on all of the files that were in that particular folder. And the advantage of using a query as opposed to entering all the data in manually is that if I add something to this folder, another map, for example, see, this is a map that is not in the folder we selected. If I add it in there, all I would have to do then is refresh the query, and it would have added that new map in and still keep the same formatting that we applied to all of the others. But for the purposes here, I actually don't want that in here, and I can refresh again. So now I'm just going to format this table in a certain way. And then for the enable column, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a drop down. So if I go into data validation, I can change this input from any value to a list, and it's going to be either yes or no. And then I'm going to apply that to all those other rows, so they just have those inputs. So these are all the columns that the utility is going to use. They don't necessarily have to be in this order, but they all need to be in the row which is determined by this header row. So the header row is specifying 2, so all of the headers must be in column 2, or in row 2. So since this map pack generator is able to handle map packs of greater than 100 maps, we are going to be needing subpacks in the map, and this parameter can choose what our subpack limit is going to be. So a subpack limit of 25 will limit 25 maps into a subpack. And that's about all that's needed to know for generating the map pack. So what I'm going to do is first, I'm going to clear the code that's already in the editor here. And then when I hit the Generate Map Pack button, all it's going to do is take each of the individual contents of these files and put them together in an overall script. So if I hit Generate Map Pack, it copied all 195 files. You can see at the top here is where it has our random structures to define the probability of choosing a subpack, and then if a particular subpack is chosen, the percent chance for each map to be selected. So the subpacks are a weighted probability based on how many maps are in that particular pack. So since we have 195 maps, they can't fit equally into all 8 packs. So the last pack has fewer maps. This one has only 20 maps instead of 25, so it has a lower percent chance of being selected. And then after that, it just says if that particular map is selected, and it grabs the code from that file that we specified. And of course, it does the same thing for all 195 files that were in our list. So if we go down, we can see that we were able to generate over 72,000 lines of code just with the click of a button, which is pretty cool. So if you want to change the individual percent chance that a certain map will be selected, you could do that here, or you could do it after you copy it into a map script. So what I can do is I can copy this and paste it into an RMS file. So it's usually better to find out the range that you need to copy. So in this case, my last column is column H. So I'm going to grab this n row at column H and then go up to the beginning, and then I can paste it into a RMS file. And we can see that in the scenario editor, it can take a bit of time to generate a pack this big. It's not such a noticeable thing once you are trying to generate it in a game. But we can see that it randomly selected a map. And then we can hit generate again. We can see we have another map. So we can see that this map pack manager has been able to assemble a script with quite a lot of efficiency and removed potential errors that would occur if we copied and pasted all these individual maps into the overall script manually. But that's not the only thing this manager can do. So the manager can also update the individual maps based on what changes are made in the editor. So when you're dealing with map packs such as these, if there are any errors in the individual RMS files, those would also be copied over into the overall map pack. So in order to maintain consistency, if we found a bug in a individual map file, we would have to fix that bug in 2 places. We would have to fix the bug once in the individual map file, and then another time in the overall map pack. So this is where the other half of the manager comes into play, where we can update the individual maps. So if I take a look at the map script that we've generated here, the overall pack, we can see that there's a syntax error in one of the individual maps. So this map is Bullseye, and in the cliff section we have a syntax error that says min distance cliff, which is actually supposed to say min distance cliffs, plural, which is proper syntax. So with me being lazy sometimes, I can sometimes copy a cliff statement with improper syntax over to many different maps. So if I were to replace the improper syntax with the proper syntax, we can see that that occurred in 33 different places. And normally, in order to fix those issues in the individual apps, I would need to search for that particular line of code, figure out which map is in, and then go back into the individual RMS file and fix it there. But when we're working with this manager, we don't have to do that. We don't even care which maps it ended up in. All we need to do is make sure that the editor is updated with the changes that we made. And then we can go back to the Manager tab, and we can update the individual maps based on the modified code in the editor. And so this is where the title comes in terms of the brackets. So when the individual maps are being updated, the utility will search through the different maps in the editor tab and look for that particular title. So the reason why we're enclosing these in brackets is for two reasons. So the first is to protect for situations in which the name of your map is shared by something else in the game. So for example, I have a map called Crater, and Crater is also the name of an object in the game, so enclosing the name of the map in brackets helps differentiate between that particular object and the map. And then also, it's meant to protect for situations when you have very similar names for maps. So if the utility was looking for the string cross, it would keep looking through the editor tab and it'll say, I found it, it's over here. And yes, that's true, but we wanted it to reference this index instead of this index. So that's also a situation in which the brackets are useful for making sure we're grabbing the correct section. And if I update the individual maps, so it was able to update our individual maps. So that way if we go back into our map folder, we can see that we have the timestamp, which this was updated. And so the map I looked at was Bullseye. We can go through and see that the syntax was changed to whatever we had changed it to in the editor. And the maps don't necessarily have to even exist. If we have all the items in the editor tab, and if we update our individual maps, we can see that even though those files didn't exist, we can generate them based on what content is in our editor. So that is essentially what the map pack manager is able to do. It's able to generate map packs based on individual maps. It's able to update those individual maps based on changes we make in the editor. So if you're interested in trying this out, then absolutely feel free. And I hope it ends up being as useful to you as it is to me. So I guess that's it for me for now. So thanks for watching.